Hey Slayers, and if you can't tell by the title, today's video is all about my top 10 reasons the Sega Saturn, my favorite console of all time, could have succeeded. If you can't tell by my channel theme, which is Sega Saturn from the Sega Hard Girls, it's an anime about three girls that are literally just dressed like Sega consoles, or I guess are technically Sega consoles. There's Mega Drive, Dreamcast, and Saturn, my all-time favorite, because the Saturn is my all-time favorite console. And I'm going to tell you my top 10 reasons the Saturn could have succeeded, okay? And reason number one, price point. Now, the Sega Saturn was $399. Now, I'm pretty sure we've all heard that famous Sony press conference where the guy walks up, says one word, $299, walks off stage. By that point, the Saturn knew it was dead. There was really no point in recovering. We couldn't try. We couldn't do it. It was over. So that segues me into number two. If it didn't betray stores, retailers. If it didn't betray the retailer. Sorry, I can't talk today. As we know, the Sega Saturn had a planned launch later on that year, which was 1995 in America. But with Sega thinking it was a smart move to get a one-up on the PlayStation, released it the same day they revealed it at E3. That same day it was available, but only at select retailers. So Sega thinking they were smart actually screwed themselves in the end, because retailers that didn't get the Saturn, I think it was only available at like three stores, Toys R Us or two, Toys R Us and KB Toys, which both of those are sadly not here. I've never been to a KB Toys. It might still be here. I never visit one, but I have been to multiple Toys R Us. We probably all have if you live in the U.S. But number three, a Sonic game at launch. I don't think I have to say this. We should all know Sonic was Sega's mascot, okay? And I'm not even saying it had to be a 3D Sonic game. Okay, I'm not even saying it had to be a 3D Sonic game. You could have gave us a new 2D Sonic game. What about a Sonic 4? That would have been something better than what we got. So that was number three. Number four. Sorry, I'm a little bit out of it today. Number four, a heavier focus on 3D. The Saturn, as we know, Sega of Japan believed 2D was the future and that 3D was to take a backseat, and no one cared about 3D. Well, let me look over here real quick. Looks like most of us play our games in 3D today. So, I'd say that wasn't a very good idea, huh, Sega of Japan? No, it was not. Number five, a heavier focus on third-party games. Okay, the Saturn, while having some third-party games, didn't really have not that many third-party games. Okay, yeah, third-party games, sure, but nowhere near the amount that the Genesis got. Like, the Saturn didn't really have third-party games, really. It did, but even then, most of them weren't that good. They were pretty much watered-down PlayStation ports. And number six, a price cut. After the first year, the Saturn should have received a price cut. Look, I understand you have to make a profit, but you also have to understand you're not making a profit if your system's not selling. Maybe I could have seen release a slimmer model, something like that. Remove the cartridge port. Remove the cartridge port. Things that really weren't needed on the back of the system. Slim it down a bit. Give us a smaller controller. Boom. Price cut. Sega didn't do that. Okay. So, what was that number? That was number 6 or 7. That was 6. Number 7. Let the Saturn ride its full life. Now, as we know, the Sega of Japan didn't really let Tom Kalinske do what he wanted to do like he did with the Genesis. He had full control to do what he wanted in America with the Genesis. They didn't let him have that control. They tried to barter with Sega, and I'm gonna tell you this right now. Tom Kalinske is the greatest Sega president of all time. Well, Sega of America. It's without him, Sega wouldn't even be a big name today. At least not in America. It would not be a big name today. It wouldn't be remembered. It'd be more remembered like something like the Sunsoft TurboGrafx 16 or Sunsoft PC Engine in Japan. It'd be pretty much forgotten. Sega wouldn't have made it through without Tom. And for them to just throw him out like that, it was really kind of sad. Okay, so number 8. More Genesis favorites. Okay, so as we know, the Saturn didn't get a real Sonic game. The Saturn didn't get a new Streets of Rage, didn't get a new Rise Star, didn't get a new Vector Man, didn't get a new Golden Axe. Well, it did get Golden Axe to Fighters, but not a new mainline Golden Axe game. The Saturn didn't get new games. It didn't get it didn't bring new, like, how can I say this? Why can't I say this? Why can't I get out? It didn't add any new additions to old franchises, old fan favorites, eternal champions, things like that. It didn't get what the Genesis got. All those series, it's like Sega just immediately forgot about them when the Saturn came around. Okay, so number 9, in support for older consoles. Another really big problem that the that the Saturn had was Sega was basically in competition with itself. Okay, so when the Saturn released here in America, Sega was supporting the Saturn, the 32X, the Sega CD, the Sega Genesis, the Sega Master System, the Sega Game Gear, the Sega Pico, if anyone knows what the Pico is, still releasing PC games, and still focusing on the arcade market, you know what I'm saying? So Sega was really in a tough spot because it was basically competing with itself. Now, in all honesty, Sega should have did what Nintendo did, okay? Sega should have dropped the 32X after they saw that flopped. They should have dropped the Sega CD. That should have been gone. The Master System should have ended its support. It was really no need for it anymore. By that point, most people had a Genesis, and the Genesis could have just acted like the younger brother of the Saturn, kind of like Nintendo did with the Super Nintendo 2. So it could have just been a dual Saturn and Game Gear, or a new handheld, or drop the handhelds altogether. Although I like Sega's handhelds, I love the Sega handhelds. They should have just let it be the Saturn and the Game Gear. Maybe gave the Game Gear a price cut again, made it a lot cheaper to get it into a lot more hands. And then, like Nintendo did with the Game Boy Color, they gave it a little midway upgrade. Sega could have did the exact same thing, and it could have just been the Saturn and the Game Gear. Okay, so that was number 9. So number 10, and this is the final reason why I think the Saturn could have succeeded. How it could have succeeded. Bring lots more games from Japan. Well, there's also a bonus 11, so it's top 10, but it's 11. So there's a bonus 11, but for number 10, bring more games from Japan. There were so many great games left in Japan. Why? Like, I know that the Saturn did great over there. The Saturn did better than the N64 in Japan. And if you go to Japan, it was the N64 in third, the Saturn in second, and the PlayStation in first. But the N64 beat the Saturn everywhere else. The Saturn was only in second in Japan, and that was nowhere near enough. So what was Sega gonna do? Well, over here in the American markets, bring more series from Japan, series that we haven't heard of here in America, and give us more reasons to buy a Saturn over a PlayStation. Sega didn't do that. They kind of just sat there. And decided, you know what, we'll let the PlayStation win. Like I already mentioned earlier, they abandoned the Saturn too fast. They could have gave it a better chance. Okay, and number 11, which this is the top 10 video, but the bonus reason, better advertising. Now look, We've all seen that PlayStation commercial where Crash runs up on Nintendo begging Mario to come out. Or we've seen the Nintendo commercial where Nintendo had two guys, one in a Sega shirt, one in a Sony shirt, torturing a Mario doll. What did we see from Sega? A couple advertisements of them saying the Saturn was better than the PlayStation. We got one advertisement where they dropped the PlayStation and Nintendo 64 for roof. That's about it. That's not really helping anything. A more aggressive marketing campaign. Here, see, it's like here in America, most people didn't even know the Saturn existed. If you weren't a hardcore Sega fan, lots of people didn't even know the Saturn existed. It kind of just fell into a limbo. And I can completely blame, look, I'm not going to say Sega of America was angels, because they did make a lot of bad games. Sega of Japan altogether made the better games, okay? But in the end, I don't think Sega of Japan made the better decisions, because they didn't. The decision to think that 2D was the future over 3D. Why? You could clearly see 3D was going to be the future for years on end. Even other divisions of Sega knew future was the 3D, but Sega of Japan just couldn't see it. They wouldn't let Tom Kalinske have control, okay? And I'm just going to state this right now. Keep this in mind. Sega had an opportunity to not only buy the PlayStation from Sony and use it before Sony decided to go single, but Tom Kalinske wanted the PlayStation because Sony wasn't ready after Nintendo, turned on them and went with Philips. Sony wasn't ready to give up, so they took the PlayStation to Sega, to Tom Kalinske. And he thought it was a great idea. He thought here we should have had a Sega PlayStation. He took it to Japan. He flew out to Japan. They denied it and thought the Saturn was their future. And it didn't end up being so. Oh, and not only did Sega have a chance to have the PlayStation, they also had a chance to have the Nintendo 64. Because the company, I forgot, was it 3DFX? No, I don't think it's 3DFX. They brought their new chipset to Sega, and Tom Kalinske again thought it would have been a great idea for a console because he knew the Saturn wasn't going to succeed. So when he took that beautiful chipset, the beautiful new basically console they've designed for Sega, to Sega of Japan, can you guess what they told him? They told him no. The Saturn was the future. So he sent that company who designed that beautiful 64-bit chipset to Nintendo. Lo and behold, it becomes the Nintendo 64, and Tom Kalinske ended up resigning, which, I mean, you can't blame the guy. Sega really didn't treat him well after the Genesis. So, I could go all day about why the Saturn, how the Saturn could have succeeded. I'm not going to bore you with my infinite knowledge of Saturn. If you want me to return and make a top 10 reasons the Saturn could have succeeded part 2, let me know. I will make that. And I do also plan on making top 10 reasons the Dreamcast could have succeeded. Okay? See you, Slayers.